Morning, guys, and welcome to the round 13 NRL review of Footy Rants. Well, there was some really close games on the weekend, ones that could have gone either way. A couple of the upsets that I predicted didn't really come off, but nevertheless, well, let's dive straight into some of the video highlights from the weekend. So our first game we had was between the Melbourne Storm and the Newcastle Knights, and obviously a lot of the chat around this game was how Billy Slater was going to return fire after Origin 1 and all that sort of drama and blah 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 blah. And well, he did just that, didn't he? Slater had an absolute wear of a game. He ended up with two try assists. Pretty much left no stone unturned. And this big lump of a lad here, Vunivalu, he didn't really take a step back. It was going to be interesting to see how they performed without Cameron Smith, but true to the structures that the Melbourne Storm possess, it was never really looked in doubt, to be honest, and it very much turned out to be a case of first versus last on the ladder. Just some really crafty, well-executed plays, and it just sort of really pointed out where the Newcastle Knights lack experience, and I honestly think that's all it is. It's just more experience rather than out and out skill. Obviously, that skill will come with experience. The positives to take out of things for the Newcastle Knights, like their completion rates were still really good. Still kept them up over 80%, and they were trying really hard, but when you're coming up against an outfit that feels like they're in form, and you got guys that just slot into structure so easily, Slade Griffin hadn't played for a while, and Brandon Smith was on debut. Things just gelled really quickly for him. And when you've still got that combination of Cronk and Slater, well, anything can happen. I thought, again, Dane Gagai tried hard, but there's a few stats there, like, he came up with 2 try assists, but then only came up with five tackles and missed 4. So, you don't want to be getting that missed tackle count up around that 50% mark as a fullback. It's never going to lead to much joy. And again, the fact that he's playing so much footy in such a short period of time obviously tested him out too. But yeah, look at this, just masterclass. Just drawing defenders. That's the influence of a Cooper Cronk. When he's on and he's running the ball to the line, he's attracting players, and that's where he creates a space for blokes like Munster and Slater. It was really good to see this try. Brandon Smith diving over for his first try. It's been a long time coming. He probably felt like he may have been a chance of playing some NRL at his time at the Cowboys and being the captain of the under-20s up there, and he was their player of the year last year and their captain. And it was really good to see him get his just deserves in the absence of Smith. And, that try there, to me, at the 72nd minute mark, that just goes to show that they're the little 1%ers that I'm looking for as Nathan Brown. Yes, we got absolutely annihilated on the scoreboard 40-12, but, we were happy to stay in the game. So pretty much a clinical performance from the Melbourne Storm, and it's what you expect. It's what you expect, but that they'll want to be pressing forward the Newcastle Knights and wanting to build some more constructive gameplay around that, because they will be able to afford themselves more opportunities against lesser opposition. So, I think, again, that the Newcastle Knights will definitely win a few more games before the season's out. They're definitely building, and hopefully they can get a couple more marquee signings during this trade period, because, losing Dane Gagai to the Rabbitohs has been another massive hit. They welcome Ponga in, but Ponga doesn't bring anywhere near the experience, and now Gagai's a state of origin player. So, yeah, really unfortunate for the Newcastle Knights. I do really feel for Nathan Brown, but yeah, a great performance nonetheless. You can't take that away from Melbourne Storm. The execution was great. Billy Slater was great. if he's kept out of Origin 2 now, it's pretty much the suppressed ego of the Queensland selectors. Our next game, the Eels and the Warriors. Well, you know, I thought the Warriors were going to get their first win on Aussie soil for the year. They're now none from 8. It's obviously something that needs to be addressed. And they started off really, really shaky. Found themselves down 12-0 after not too long, but fought back quite valiantly, which is something that we're not really used to seeing from a Warriors outfit. And we see, you know, Bevan French had his big part to play on the game himself. Gutherson was magic for them. They both carried, again, everything seemed to match up throughout the game. Similar stats through the game, and they've held similar stats and similar positions on the ladder throughout the season. The Warriors had the better of them in New Zealand earlier in the year, and this is what they should have kept going to. Have a look at this. This has got to be one of the worst defensive reads of the year. Mitchell Moses just caught in no man's land. You cannot get in a worse place when you're defending your own line. Cannot get in a worse place. And then they have Joy just playing a different option. It's the exact same play. So for me, like they started to go away from that for a little while. They sucked them all in, and it was just a matter of too little, too late. When you got a big bloke like Kemba Marlowe trying to run over Ben French, it's a done deal. And this really was the play that cost them. If this play doesn't happen, at this point in time, the Warriors had all the momentum, and it very much looked like they were going to halftime with a lead. So when Radra scores this try here in the 33rd minute, that was a massive momentum shift and really pushed them over the line. And then you compound that penalty there. I just want to go back. And this is where I believe Sean Johnson is really getting it wrong. Again, that's that poor read. Yeah, so he's going to this right edge here, and then doesn't even get the ball to the line. So it's a bit sensitive today. And then just no urgency to shut the play down. They're just little 1%ers that you don't see great halves do. So that was the two big plays for me. So Johnson heads to that edge, doesn't come up with a result on the kick, and then comes up with a poor defensive read. So they're compounding issues. For me, they need to continue to let Kieran Foran be involved in the play. And you see there, they've run the same play again, and it wasn't even at half that delivered the ball. That was Simon Mannering that set that play up for Hoffman. So, that's how much brittleness there was on that right edge defence for Parramatta. And this is just individual brilliance that very much got them back in the game from Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. We've seen that right foot come out 3 times and bang, 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 it's all over. And that's just playing on tired defence. And probably inexperienced defence. Will Smith wouldn't have played too many games. The big rap that you've got to give Parramatta is the fact they lost Pritchard so early. Gower went out. There's a couple other injuries as well. And for them to just hang in there, it was their game to lose, you know what I mean? It wasn't so much that the Warriors were going to fight back and have this have a massive win. It was the Eels' game to lose because they had all the adversity to overcome. We've seen that man at the end there, Clint Gutherson. He's just been inspirational. It was a shame to see Josh Hoffman go down with that nasty knee injury. I suspect he'll be on the sideline for a number of weeks, and I guess in one sense that'll make the selection headache for Coach Brad Arthur somewhat easier. You would suspect that Gutherson will probably just fill in on that wing and look to try and just get himself involved as much as he can. They may even push him one in just so he's a little bit closer to the footy in at centre. It will be interesting what happens there. But the big plus when those players got injured Manu Mao, Tepe Maroa, and Nathan Brown, they all played 80 minutes. So the edge and a middle all got 80 out. So that's a big pat on the back to those guys, and a big return to Coach Brad Arthur. You know, when you're shown with adversity and you show that you can stand up to adversity and get wins like that, they're the gritty wins that you want to see. If you can, start to tidy up some of the fundamentals, you're going to go toe-to-toe, and you don't need to win games 32-24. You can put teams away 32-10. And that will come when you don't have to deal with all those sort of injuries. And I very much believe that, if Pritchard doesn't go out injured there, they can use Smith a bit more effectively, rotate their forwards a lot more effectively, and they probably wash the Warriors out. But yeah, they definitely need to address that defense with Mitchell Moses. I don't think the barrage is going to stop from any sort of media outlet about how poor that is. I'm not sure what it is, but you can't, it has to be identified with him. He has to accept that it's the way that he defends within the system, because you can't just fall back on an excuse now, I'm new to the club. Like, he's been there for 3 weeks now, and he was delivering the same results for all his years at the Tigers. So, that's something that I know he'll be getting fucking punished with. But on the opposing side, for the Warriors, Bodine Thompson, like, some of his misses were terrible. The way that he gets beaten on the outside at times, he just doesn't have that turn of pace. And that sort of stresses me a little bit. You see some of the back rollers that we've got in the game today, like, they can move, and I just don't think he just has that footwork to be able to get out of there effectively. That pretty much sums up my performance for the Warriors. So again, nothing much changes, unfortunately. On paper, they're one of the best teams in the comp, and they continue to fail to deliver. None from 8 in Australia. It needs to change dramatically. They almost need to win every game in Australia now if they're going to be any chance of partaking in any finals. And if that doesn't change and they still manage to make the finals, well, what's the point if you can't make the trip over here, make the transition here? I know that they have arguably one of the toughest rosters. The fact that the time zones are constantly changing, fortnightly for them, it must be absolute hell on their bodies as far as recovery and stuff goes. But that's the nature of the beast, I guess. You've got the Storm and North Queensland not necessarily dealing with time zone changes, but flight times as well, and disruption with flights out of Sydney. So every other team has to deal with some sort of adversity. Moving on to the next game, we had the Dragons versus the West Tigers. Well, pretty much one word sums up how the Dragons got away with this game, and that was Gareth Widdop. Both teams completed below 70%. It was a pretty low quality game, to be fair, and both coaches will be pretty disappointed and will very much want to be going back to the drawing board and squaring away a few fundamentals. Probably more importantly, Mary McGregor coming up against a side like the Tigers, who had a new half in Lola here at the club for the Tigers. You really wanted to take advantage of that, and they very much did here in the running game. You can see Widdop here just gets on the outside of his man and forces him to come out of the line and have a play at him. So, that's just experience from Gareth Widdop. And there was 32 offloads in the game, which means there was opportunity. Both sides gave opportunity. I think there was 20 for the Dragons and 12 for the Tigers. But execution, I think, is probably the one word that you would use for both sides. It was very much lacking. Dugan was unlucky to be awarded that try. That probably takes a little bit of heat off the scoreboard if that try does go ahead. But yeah, again, we see this man with Tui Lola here. He looked a little bit out of nick. I think he'd be probably one of the first to admit that. And that just comes with a bit of game time. I don't think it's too much to sort of stress out about. There's a definite lack of speed at New South Wales Cup in comparison to NRL. It's a next level. And one thing when you watch this Tiger side now that Moses has moved on and Brooks is in there, yes, you want your key players to stand up. And unfortunately, I guess their key players are really only Tedesco and Woods that carry that that air of experience that they have now, both playing a number of games of State of Origin. But I just feel like Tedesco at the moment, he's almost trying too hard. He's just probably trying to take on a few too many roles and responsibilities that aren't up to him, or when it's okay to ask for help, if that makes sense. And then we've seen by the end there was that much lack of direction from the halves that Aaron Woods pretty much took control and started ball playing with a little bit of success, I might add. But we've seen there the last try from Tyson Frizzell. He was absolutely magical for the Dragons before he went off injured, and Jack DeBell and Joel Thompson really stood up in his absence once he went off. So again, it sort of comes back to those Dragons forwards just out and out doing their job. Paul Vaughan and Russell Packer probably weren't quite as influential as they have been throughout the season, but definitely were far from terrible. And I think that's really what held them together for that win, that gritty win. And I guess that's one positive. Yes, you probably wanted to put away a team like the Tigers, but definitely by more than 4 points. But when you're having completions at less than 70%, and you still manage to just defend your way home, that they're the positives that I take out. Regardless of the opposition, if you can nut out 16, 12 wins and stuff like that, they're just as important as blowing the Warriors off the park in New Zealand, in my opinion. So yeah, taking the small positives, it's the fact that they were able to stick to their structures. You could see out there their timing was a little bit off. Josh Dugan, I felt it's going to take him a little bit of time. Laurie Daly wasn't afraid to admit that he struggled with the pace of Origin. Obviously, it sounded like it was one of the fastest ever, and it being his first game back after that fractured cheekbone, it was always going to take a little bit of time. But yeah, his timing just out the back, playing fullback, obviously playing two different positions in such short space of time. You just felt like he was trying to be 2 or 3 meters ahead of where he needed to be, and he was constantly catching the ball behind him. I noticed that with a few plays when he was playing at the back on that right edge. So, I think that's all sort of superficial stuff. It'll come. He's a professional. He's played at that rep level, and he's playing at that rep level for a reason. He's one of the best players in the game, and I've got no doubt that he'll sort of pick up where he left off by next week. Into the next game, we had the Roosters versus the Broncos. Obviously, the big talking point was the halves missing for either side in Pearce and Milford, and it was pretty evident, really, that's where they sort of lacked the execution at crucial times. We see here some absolutely dreadful defence from Sam Thaiday and Adam Blair. Gets picked apart by a young fella. You see Thaiday there just glaring back at what should have been. And then we see just this man, Michael Gordon, he just keeps showing up and doing what he does best. There's some good structured play there, and we got to see a bit of a glimpse of old Benji showing up in the line, getting his running game, and it was good to see a half pass for a try assist. But yeah, it was just missing that squeaky clean execution. We've seen what that left edge has been capable of doing for the Roosters, but I just felt Keary just didn't execute quite as cleanly as he normally did. That man there on screen there, Boyd Cordner, well, he pretty much just dictated terms, didn't he? At halftime, he at 12-6, I wasn't really too stressed for the Broncos. I thought they were very much in the game. The stats probably played their way a little bit, and they just needed to bide their time. But again, here's just some one-on-one defensive efforts there. It was absolutely glorious by Ferguson on his opposing Origin winger in Corey Oates. But they just need more of that consistency there. The Bronx just lacked that flair, to be honest. We see here Moga goes through. They develop all of this momentum during the back end of the game, but didn't really do anything with it. And when things are going your way, things are going your way, and that's what's happening for Boyd Cordner. We see Jordan Carr, who come up with a fundamental error. You couldn't have done it any better, I don't think. It was quite spectacular, really. And you can't really blame one person for a loss, but, that is a crucial error. Much like, you can't blame the Origin loss on Justin O'Neill, but the fact that drop ball led to points, critical points, just goes to show what happens. And the stats read that the Broncos should have gone out, and I don't know, I was sitting here watching this game and I just knew it wasn't going to go over. You could just tell with JK, he seems sort of like a guy that can get in his own way a lot of the time. And having made that error to let the Roosters skip out in front in the first place, you just felt that he was holding on to a sense of responsibility, and whether or not he could overcome that, well, it was evident that he wasn't able to. So, again, going back to some of the poor defensive reads, you expect more from your Origin players like a Thaiday like that. And again, I know it's just one-on-one miss, but again, if you're looking at fundamental points in the game, crucial points in the game, those are the points. One-on-one tackles missed by Sam Thaiday, drop ball by Kahu. They're the little things. I honestly thought that McCulloch coming back was going to make a big difference, but someone that I thought that was going to support him in that role was Cody Nikorima, and he was left out. And I think that sort of bit the Broncos in the arse. They're horrible in the wet. We've seen earlier in the year they got absolutely suffocated by the Bulldogs. They had no answers, and it was much the same here. Not a lot of scoring, not a super high scoring game. But yeah, not having Nikorima there, I thought he probably could have just added a little bit of spark around the ruck. It's a little bit harder for those forwards to get moving once that ground starts to thicken up. And yeah, I really, really believe that he could have made the difference. But when you've got a captain in Boyd Cordner who just wants it, he just wanted it more. 19 hit-ups, 156 metres, 28 tackles, 2 tries, and all his defensive efforts. Spoke about it last week, Keary's defensive efforts in the absence of Boyd Cordner. With Cordner returning, Keary only missed 1 tackle. So it just shows you how much work that bloke puts in, and how much, I don't even think it's how much work he puts in and how much he cleans up for Keary. It's how much trust that Keary has in him. It just brings him that confidence, allows him to relax. Whereas when he had Madison there, it was just, this is a young fella, he's still coming, finding his feet, finding his role. He's played all over the shop last year, and he's still, he's playing back row centre now. That's pretty much where they've sort of identified him. But they just didn't have that confidence there for him. So, you can't say that the Broncos didn't have their opportunities. I really thought they were going to come down there and cause a bit of an upset, cause a bit of a ruckus, especially with McCulloch coming back. I just felt like that was a bit more of a plus. Developing that relationship with Hunt again, but it wasn't to be. And the last game of Super Saturday, my beloved Cowboys, they just go to show you don't tip against your team, eh? They continue to thrive under adversity, but I don't really want to get too carried away with the result. A 20-8 score line in what should have been so much more. You see here, Morgan doesn't go over until the 20th minute. And it was pretty much 20 minutes of that attacking rampage of the Cowboys. They just couldn't execute. Their last tackle options were just poor. And I thought their transition, like moving from edge to edge, was just very, very clunky. Their timing was off a lot of the time. Obviously, Bowen hadn't really played for the Cowboys for a number of weeks. He's only played a couple of games this year. Really poor read up the middle here, especially after the Cowboys had so much footy. If we go back, you can see where they just get caught with 3 markers there. So that's the crucial point. So if you watch there, so that's Granville there, and you just see he never scrambles in time to get back for this play. Asiata's walking on the other side of the ruck. And you can see Gavin Cooper's already trying to flag some responsibility on on Granville to get there. You see him point out to the right there, and it's too little too late. Copley's support play up the middle was really, really good. It was great to see him come out and put on a performance like that. I thought he was one of their better players for the Titans. And then when you've got the speed and prowess of someone like Ash Taylor, it was merely a matter of just catching the ball and getting under the sticks. At this point here, I thought they were a fair crack, especially the fact that the Titans had overcome so much defense, but it proved to be pivotal. When you only have 38% of possession and then you complete at 63%. So I'll just rattle off some of the other stats. 39-16 missed tackles. They were on the end of a 10-5 penalty count. And two of the players that have been super influential for those guys this year, and Tyrone Roberts and Jared Hayne, were only kept to 7 and 5 touches of the footy respectively. I sort of thought that Hayne was going to grow a leg. He'd sort of secured his future for another year in the NRL. He'd been a part of a super successful Blues Origin campaign, but it just wasn't to be. But the positives that I take out of that, as Neil Henry should, we only lost to a side by 2 tries. By 2 tries off the back. If I see 38% possession with a 63% completion rate with 14 errors, I'm like, fuck, we're probably in for a long day at the office. We probably got absolutely belted. So that's a small win you've got to take out of it. There were patches there where they should have taken probably more opportunities than what they did. They should have executed and probably come up with points, but they didn't. So there's no point really dwelling on that too much. You've got to try and take out of it what you can, take the lessons out of it what you can. To be honest, with that result, I'm probably more concerned if I'm Paul Green. The fact that you've had so much footy and you've still got a Morgan, a Granville and a Coot. There's still plenty there. The fact that you still pretty much had to rely on a kid who's in his first full season of NRL in Cohen Hess to come out and fires the fuck up and just grab the ball by the horns. He was just steaming behind the ruck and said, give me the fucking ball, I'm going to score. And that's exactly what he did against the Titans last time. He came up with a double and won them the game. So I think you can pretty much put him down to being the momentum shifter coming off the bench in both of those performances against the Titans. It's a big concern. I know as a Cowboys fan and just as an analyst of the game, like they're going to look so much better when Thurston's there. If you have those sort of stats that an opposition is giving you the opportunities with, he's going to make you pay. That should have been, and I'm going to allude to it later, but the Penrith game, that should have been the score line or something similar that the Cowboys should have come up with. They should have scored probably double the points that they did. So, always good to get 2 points. You've got to keep ticking those boxes, especially when your key playmakers are away. We can't ignore the fact that Scott has left a big hole in that team, and then the man to fill it, Kafusi, is now gone. So, we're starting to scrape the barrel of as far as the depth of our side goes. But, you've got to keep showing up and proving against adversity that you're able to get those victories. So then we move into Sunday, and this was an absolute belter again. We've seen a golden point game earlier in the season between these two, and nothing changed. And you very much felt that was on the cards and that it was going to be close. I tipped Manly by 1-12, and they gave me the 1. It was very much a game of 2 halves. You've seen a big momentum shift here when the big man Shannon Boyd went off. He's obviously been instrumental along with Junior Paulo and Soliola and Papali. They've been the big marquee forwards for the Raiders who've been doing their job, but they just started to get picked apart in the second half of the first half. This man here, Rapana, he pretty much single-handedly kept the Raiders in the game. He ended up with 2 tries and that try assist there for Blake Austin. And for me, where the Raiders lost it, 62% completion rate. You need to be completing well above 60% to be winning games. And the fact that they even gave themselves a chance of winning the game, it just shows how potent they are. You know, the fact that on their day, they can beat anyone. They can. But so can so many other teams in the comp. And that's where I was, getting back to those points in the preview, that why this NRL competition is one of the best in the world. Because any team on their day will win. But they don't. There's some great finishes there we see from George Tafua. He continues on his winning ways. But yeah, when you're relying on single players in Rapana and stuff like that to get you out of trouble, here's a stat that I picked apart. The right edge, so that's with Whitehead, Austin, Rapana, and BJ Leilua, they made 89 tackles in comparison to the left edge's 49 tackles. So it was pretty clear to see what Manly was trying to do. They were trying to run some footy down there, tire them out, so that they weren't able to be effective in attack. And it still didn't fucking work. You know what I mean? So you see there the man of the hour, Jordan Rapana, came up with 12 more carries than his opposite winger in Nick Kotrick, so his opposite winger in his own side. 3 times as many meters. And I mean, look at that effort, the ability, the awareness. You see that man going to dummy half inside their own 20. You know he's running the ball, and it still doesn't matter. It's one thing to know what's going to happen and another thing to stop it. So yeah, it was disappointing. That would have been very, very disappointed being Trent Barrett. The fact that they let this team back in with the momentum that they carried in the first half. Their last point was scored in the 38th minute. They didn't score a point again until this point right here from Daly Cherry Evans when he ices the game with the field goal. Yes, it's good. You take the positives. A win's a win. But when your opposition is only completing at 62%, you need to be making them pay by more than 1 point. So that's again where I'm sort of disappointed from a Manly perspective. They should have really gone on with that game, and they had their opportunities there at the end before they were called back for an obstruction, and that was unfortunate. But there were some silky skills shown by both sides. That try, the pass from Kelly to George Tafua to score, that was amazing. But yeah, when you've got finishes like that, they need to be. Manly side needs to capitalise more on blokes like their Marty Tapau. It was good to see a glimpse there. He ended up 22 hit-ups, 227 metres, 22 tackles. That's a massive game for a big man across 60-odd minutes. But we need to be seeing it on a more consistent basis. He needs to be grabbing the bull by the horns and stepping up on a more consistent basis, not just allowing himself to have that 1 or 2 plays every now and then and sort of hide behind the work rate of a Brenton Lawrence and a Jake Vojovic. He needs to get on the front foot and stand up as a fucking leader of that club, because that's what he is now. We've seen the damage that he can cause. He's not afraid of anyone, and I don't think it comes from an egotistical sort of point of view. I think he just knows what he has and uses it effectively. So he needs to be doing that on a more consistent basis. So that would be my challenge to Marty Tapau, is to make that a more consistent performance rather than a 1 in 4, 1 in 5 games. So moving into the last game here, we see on screen the Bulldogs versus the Panthers, and I tipped a 13+ performance. I wanted to see an 80-minute performance, and this is what I got. So this is essentially what the Cowboys should have done to the Titans. They were just drowned out of the game, the Bulldogs early on. There's so many notable performers from Penrith. I thought Moylan looked great at 6. I hope he stays there. I hope they never fucking move the kid from there, because Dylan Edwards was also fucking phenomenal. He just continued to get his hands on the footy. His carries from the back were great. He never took a backward step. It really excites me when I see a kid, he's only 21, when he gets the footy from the back and he's charging into the line. You see a bloke there in Mitch Rain, he gets his first try, ends up with 2. There's something about that. Look at his pass, just from Mitch Rain, the way that he gets that. This is someone who you can just tell knows his craft. That there's someone when you see a dummy half pass the ball, you know if he's been a dummy half his whole life or not. There's perfection in it. And that offload from Isaiah Yo, he ended up with 2 try assists, so he gets another one later in the game for Wonga Blake when he gets through. Pops it up there, beautiful. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Who else do we have in there? I got really excited around this game. I love watching Penrith play when they're on the front foot. And that's why I was getting so frustrated early on when I was doing footy rants that they should have been performing. You know, just off the cuff shit. That's what they're about. That's a winger. Josh Mansour in his first game back pops a kick through, and Cleary's just pushing up on the footy. Like, that's just what you should be doing. They're the little 1%ers that go a long way. And when you see guys like Blake and Zalesniak steaming back in off their edges, they're damaging. They're big boys, and I think it's an arsenal that a lot of teams don't really take advantage of a lot. And this is sort of where the game began to sour a little bit towards the end. The last 10 minutes, we see Garvey go off there. It was a bit of nothing, but they've set the precedent now. Any sort of striking, whether it be close fist, open palm, it's all about the intent, pretty much. So yeah, it was really unfortunate to see the game go that way in a sense, but at the same time, it was really, really cool to see a good old fashioned, call people out, get under their skin, and get a result. So it ended up sort of being Regan Campbell-Gillard up against Cassiano. So they didn't have it there in the highlights, but Cassiano has this carry out of their back end, and essentially it ends up having a big old look at Regan Campbell-Gillard and gets right underneath him and forces the error, and everyone gets around him, and then Clemmer and Merrim were going at each other, and that was good to see because they've played rep footy together at New South Wales and Australian level, so there was nothing to hold back there. They were ripping in, and I'm sure that that's just a part of the game, and their mates afterwards, and they shake hands and move on. But yeah, it's just so many positives for the Penrith side. 8-1 line breaks, 14-5 offloads, and then when the Dogs are missing 48 tackles on the end of a 12-7 penalty count, and then Garvey gets sin bin, well, 38-0. It really doesn't come as much as a surprise. It's more the fact that Penrith were able to go out there and really execute on what the Bulldogs afforded them. Areas where they really lacked the Doggies, obviously missing their captain in Graham, and still the spark and dog-heartedness of Josh Reynolds was a massive loss. Some of the defensive reads of Mbai, smaller body, just got isolated one-on-one a couple of times. We see in the first try, Harawira Naira ran straight over the top of him. Just some of the squeaky clean execution of their spine. Frawley, we seen there was a pass that he was tipping out the back, his left to right, just dragged it, and it just really fucked the whole play up. Leisha out of dummy half was real clunky. He kept looking for these weird fucking penalties around the ruck, which didn't, the refs were never going to penalise because they seen what he was trying to do, so there was intent behind it. And all it did was actually disadvantage the Dogs because it just fucked the timing of his forwards who were trying to push up on the ruck. And he got stung with a couple of forward passes and probably got away with a couple as well. So, that's something that I'm probably looking to iron out of his game if I'm Hasler. The only real pat on the back that I can give for anyone in the Dogs lineup is Adam Elliott. In my opinion, he's the future captain of that club. He's got rep footy just written all over him. He's just a fucking hard worker. He does the 1%ers, but he's also got that flair. He's going to get over the line for you. He's not someone who just floats around like a Josh Jackson and just gets his reputation through work rate. He's got that work rate plus creative flair. He's got the offload. He runs that great line to score tries. And what I was really pleased with was that he was the one who kept his cool. He was the one who kept his cool during that last 10 minutes. He dove on a kick on the in goal and cleaned up from what could have been a possible try. So they're just the little 1%ers that I'm looking for when I'm watching the game on who's going to stand up when shit's not going your way. I fucking can't stand players who, everything's all peachy when you're on the run. Players that come to mind are Dylan Walker, Latrell Mitchell, guys like that. When shit's going right, like it's all good, but they actually rely on the guys who do all the unsaid work to get their results in the fucking first place. And I think a lot of the times they forget that, and then that's when you create this little superstar bubble in society for these guys. So yeah, big rap on Adam Elliott. I really love watching him play. Again, Regan Campbell-Gillard's another bloke that I'll never get tired of watching. So yeah, they just need to buy more into that. The fact that Clemmer was the one that lost his cool, and you can see he was subbed at the end there before he fucking did something that he was going to regret essentially. So yeah, that was the recap of round 13. So we still see the Melbourne Storm leading the charge, 2 points clear on top of the ladder. So it's a matter of trying to chase them down. And yeah, I think we'll still definitely see a number of changes to the bottom half of that top 8, but we're getting closer to deciding that top 3. You've got to feel that the Sharks and the Dragons and Roosters, they'll probably be close to being your top 4. If the Broncos can continue to get it together, they'll probably give it a good shake. But otherwise, yeah, it's probably going to be a big old run for, I'd probably say, 6th, 7th, and 8th, especially during that last 6 to 8 weeks. So yeah, it's all building up now. We're into the run home. So yeah, let's all get involved, get behind your clubs, and enjoy your week. And I'll be back to preview round 14. Rightio, gang. Have a good week.